My question is about feeding the sheep. When Jesus was telling Peter to feed the sheep, was he speaking about the saved one, or was he speaking about the lost sheep?
You know, there was a Syrophoenician woman. She was beseeching the Lord to heal her daughter, and the Lord was trying her, and so he was delaying what he knew he would do. He knew he would heal her daughter, but he was testing her, and then said, "It's not meet to take the children's bread and to cast it to the dogs." And in that context of that passage, Christ says he is not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And the lost sheep of the house of Israel is a figure of God's elect. Now, during the day of salvation, during the time when God is sending forth the gospel, and the gospel went out for thousands of years, and the word of God accomplished God's purpose, and it found the lost sheep. So evangelization of the world during the church age or during the second part of the Great Tribulation, the latter rain, accomplished bringing in the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And once the sheep have all been found, once all the elect have been saved, then the focus of God's attention no longer is finding the sheep, but it is feeding the sheep. And that's why the directive in John 21 from the Lord to Peter, "Lovest thou me? Yea, Lord, feed my sheep," indicating God's purpose for this time period is to feed the sheep.
Well, God's speaking to Peter when he said, "Feed my sheep." Was he speaking about the one that already saved? Or is he speaking about the one that was lost that needs feed?
The lost sheep of the house of Israel is a figure of God's elect. During the time when God is sending forth the gospel, the word of God accomplished God's purpose, and it found the lost sheep. And we have to look at the context in John 21. And the context is that interesting fishing trip where they fished all night and they caught nothing. And then in the morning, the Lord spoke to them and told them to cast on the right side of the ship. And then they had a great catch of fish. And in the Bible, we know Jesus said, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." So those fish represented men that are caught, and men that are caught in the net of the Word of God or the kingdom of heaven, and they were brought to land. Not a few fish, but a great catch of fish, which means a great number of men. And when we look at that interesting fishing expedition, where the first part they didn't catch anything, and the second part, they caught a great number. There's only one season that fits, and that's the Great Tribulation, which is two parts. First part, virtually no one was saved for 2,300 evening mornings. Second part, God saved the great multitude out of Great Tribulation. And so it is in that context of the completion of the fishing trip, of the expedition in fishing, where all the fish have been brought to land to the Lord, that then Jesus speaks to Peter and says to Peter, "Lovest thou me?" and so forth, and "Feed my sheep." So the context is key and is very important, where God is laying out a program of his purpose for the time after the great catch of fish, after the great multitude has been brought in.
So you're telling Peter to feed the sheep that already saved. So we all become sheep feeders, right? When we become saved, we become sheep feeders, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's supposed to feed God's people, feed the elect. And when we share a Bible verse or we share truth of the Bible of any kind, in a way, that's feeding sheep. We have groups on Facebook, and we have people who just post scriptures into those groups. They're doing what they can do to help feed the sheep. And others are admins of the groups, and they're taking care. And it's the idea when Jesus broke the bread and gave to the disciples, and then gave the disciples to the multitude. And those disciples went around to each group of 50, and they gave some of the bread that was in their bowl and shared the bread. And the bread is the doctrine, the teaching, the truth of the Word of God. That's feeding sheep. Now, in the day of salvation, we did the very same thing. when we would go around and we would share the truth of the Word of God, if God were pleased, he would use that to save elect and to bring in lost sheep. But that aspect of his program has been completed. And now we're not seeking lost sheep, we're just feeding them. But thank you again for calling. Let's go to our last call tonight. Welcome to our Friday night question and answer program. Please go ahead with your call.
Hi, Chris. Regarding the previous caller that had several questions, and a lot of them dealt with sheep, I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but as of May 21, 2011, all of the lost sheep had been found, and there are no more lost sheep. So the sheep that are being fed are all saved. So I don't know if that helps them or not, but...
Well, yeah, I think you're saying the same thing that I tried to say, that God did have a program for finding the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and that was in the day of salvation. That's why the people of God were sent forth into the world, and we went on track trips, and why the gospel was broadcast all over the earth, and the people of the world were warned of the coming day that God's salvation program would come to an end, and then the door would shut, the door of heaven. And so God found the lost sheep of the house of Israel by that day, by that time, and then he had his flock. He had all the sheep together, and then at that point, it's a matter of feeding them. And you have to do the same thing. As far as prophesying, you prophesy to find the lost sheep, and then to feed them, you have to do the same thing. You have to prophesy again, because you don't know who is a sheep, someone truly saved, and who isn't, and where they are. So to the outward eye, it would be hard to observe the difference as far as the activity of sharing the Word of God. And we did go on track trips recently. And again, yes, it would have been difficult for someone to outwardly see a distinction or difference, except we tried to highlight the difference with information about the door is shut and no more salvation and things like that. We do need to make that known when sharing, so we don't give anyone a sort of false encouragement or false hope.